Hi everyone, my name is Alice Bendt and I'm a student intern here at the Van Every Smith Galleries at Davidson College. Today I will be interviewing New York-based artist Mollie Serena about her video piece called Celestial Flows 1, which will be on view in the E. Craig Wall Jr. Academic Center from February 21st, 2021 through April 3rd, 2021 as part of our Color and Perception series. Mollie Serena is an interdisciplinary artist who works in photography, film, sculpture, lasers, and light art. She received her BFA in photography from the Parsons School of Design in 2008, and then went on to receive her MA in art and a PhD in philosophy, art, and critical thought from the European Graduate School in Switzerland. Her work has been featured in many exhibitions in New York, Switzerland, and Australia. Since 2016, she has been working with the Design Trust for Public Space in New York City on their Opening the Edge project. Through this involvement, she was invited to create both a temporary public installation and a permanent sculpture for the New York City Housing Authority. She currently sits on the Lower East Side Cultural Council and is an artist in resident at the Kunstraum Gallery in Brooklyn. Mollie has been kind enough to join me today for an interview, so let's get started. My first kind of general question, how did this piece come about? What inspired you to create it?
So I became very interested in climate change a couple of years ago. I have been doing my PhD at the European Graduate School, so we've been exposed to a lot more facts and really hardcore information about the realities, not just what you're told in the media, but like philosophically how it will impact our races as people. So I started considering, how do I incorporate climate change and the future into my work? It was a long process. During my master's degree, I was writing about the retail industry. And since I was in the retail industry, I got injured. And then I got injured a couple of weeks later. So I ended up being on a cane and crutches for over 2 years.
Wow.
And those 2 years, I couldn't really like go or do anything. So I ended up watching a lot of Star Trek and a lot of science fiction. And one day I was like, I really want to know what the science is about behind the TV shows like Star Trek that I loved so much. And so I ended up becoming more interested in physics. So I started teaching myself physics. And then I decided to pursue my PhD at the same school. So I started to consider climate change within this world that I was creating. And how do I create space, like when they're traveling in Star Trek in their little spacecraft, when they go through space and time and through dimensions and light, you have these dots, and sometimes the dots get pulled. And I was like, okay, so let me research light and see how I can incorporate this. Now the flowers came about, and I was thinking, okay, what is the most beautiful thing that everybody loves in nature? And that's flowers. Every time you see a flower, you get joyous and there's great smells, but then you really start to consider the life of the flower. We take it from nature, we harvest it, we pluck it, we take it out of its ecosystem, and we put it in a place it doesn't really belong, in the house, and then it dies. They would die in nature anyway too, but then you have to start considering all the emissions and the cut flower industry. And so I considered this. What would happen in different circumstances between man-made items and the natural environment in the future or in different dimensions? So I created like different worlds of scenarios where these things are sort of becoming impacted by us, and therefore the film is kind of like a message from the future warning us about climate change and what could happen when nature and technology meet in the worst possible ways. Imagine a future, a dimension where the plastic has become so much that it overtakes nature and they become entwined. And so plastic and nature and technology have merged. So scientists have to come up with a solution for this. And one of the solutions in physics is an idea called terraforming. It has not been proven, but it's really, really, really cool. So imagine you have a ball, and in this ball, there's a bunch of gases and gaseous states. And when activated, when thrown on the ground, you all of a sudden start to see nature appear in front of you. The roots start taking hold, and you immediately are able to change the entire ecosystem of a planet. But what they don't consider is the plastic and how the plastic and what they're terraforming combined. So you have this radical world of plastic and nature.
So then my next question is just how exactly technically did you create this piece in terms of the space and the filming? And I'm also wondering if you cut it down from a longer video and edit it together, or I assume there's editing involved. But sort of how long did that process take?
Um, okay, so it's all in camera.
Okay.
I don't like post-production that much.
Hmm.
So everything I try to do is as much as I can get it in the camera, I will get it in the camera. That was actually one of the first tries in my first, doing that aesthetic. So I work with a bunch of different lights and it's placed with the flowers in the center. There's maybe like 6 to 10 lights of different varying sizes and different, um, I don't use real like normal photography lights. Like I'm very much in tune with every light. Like I'll use a flashlight, I'll use a light this big, or I'll use like a big floodlight sometimes. And then I discovered laser work, and I manipulated the light from the lasers with different fabrics and different materials that kind of shift into the blackness of the space, creating like this three-dimensional effect that you kind of get in Star Trek and the kind of things that you think about when you think about space, or if you were going to travel through space, what would it look like based on the science fiction that we are accustomed to. So it's a long exposure, and I use flashlights in there too to create certain effects. So when you run a certain flashlight around a video for in a certain way, it kind of creates like light streaks. So, and then the jellyfish, I forgot that there was jellyfish in there. I make my own silk screens with silk, and I create my own patterns. And so the jellyfish pattern was actually from a scarf I made.
Okay.
And so I use the scarf to kind of like incorporate it into the space. Black is easy to, merge things into. So the post-production doesn't have to be that much.
My next question is about the your color choice in
Mm.
this piece. So it's obviously very colorful, and I was wondering kind of how you went about choosing which colors you're going to use, if there was specific meaning behind that. And I was also thinking specifically of the green dots that are kind of throughout the whole thing. And you mentioned the dots in your explanation earlier, but I was wondering if there's any significance to them being green.
I chose the green initially because I felt it was most natural, and it kind of it's the way that I perceive space. I see it as more on the green side rather than the white side. And then we're talking about alternate dimensions too. So in theory, when you have alternate dimensions, you have like they're kind of like planes of existence like this. So if you're traveling through a different plane of existence in theory, there would be like a divergent shift, like a wave, rather than just like plop, you're in, or like a hole. You would have to. It's kind of like a ripple in time. You saw the movie, so
Mhm.
it's kind of like instead of time being linear, it moves like this.
Mhm.
And that's how alternate dimensions kind of work. And then you find like these pockets where every decision, like one thing could be different and it could impact the entire thing. Like, what if Trump was never president?
Mhm.
Or what if we actually took care of the environment? Or what if we did worse? So every aspect of the multiverse creates a different scenario or situation. So with that, I like to, maybe perceive their environment. So maybe they have red stars, or maybe they have blue stars, or maybe they have two moons, or different gravity. Maybe they float a little bit more, maybe they're denser. So I always consider those things. The saturation, I like to think of fluorescence as kind of like toxic, and like the toxicity of what you see when too many chemicals like get into like a puddle on the side and it turns rainbow
Mhm.
and it gets like this green icky sludge, and it's just that's what you think of when you think of like pollution in the environment, even though that's not the way it exists on the bigger scale. Like there's that garbage island, but when you actually go there, you think it's like an island with a bunch of garbage and crap on top, but it's not. It's like little microbials that have deteriorated and gotten so small that it just pollutes everything around it. It doesn't turn green necessarily in the ocean. But here, in like when gas mixes with certain things, you get that icky green sludge. So I consider this uh, idea of neon to be a little bit on the toxic side, and we are the toxics. We are the toxics. We are the light in that perception. So this is one of the issues I like to think about in terms of our current situation and how to incorporate into the future for warnings so that we have to change our habits.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of the message that I'm trying to get through, but in a way that's not like facts, so that you can be more creative in your mind with it.
So my next question is more about the way that we're displaying the piece, and I'm not sure when I watched your video, the link that we were given to watch it, there was not sound, and I was wondering, was there ever originally sound in the video? Because the way that we show these videos on this wall is if they have sound, we take the sound away,
Yeah.
and so that oftentimes can change the dynamic of pieces. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, okay. So it originally did not have sound. I usually just play some like rap music or dance music in the background.
Mhm.
I've been collaborating with more musicians, so there is one version that has a guitar piece attached to it. I have a theremin piece. Like I mess around with theremin app. Do you know what the theremin is?
I don't know.
It's this the no it's the noise from Star Trek. It's like this weird old instrument with like strings, and like it later got modernized. It kind of looks like a DJ booth, and now you can do it like on the phone with an app, and you just kind
Mhm.
of it kind of looks like this, and then you kind of like tap the screen and it should make a
Okay.
sound. But oh, here we go. Can you hear this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can like change the volume. You can make it higher pitch, lower pitch, deep
Mhm.
tone, low tone, and it's a very unique tool, and not many people use it. So I really like things that are kind of obsolete. It can change the experience, but my work is interdisciplinary, so I don't mind that change because I want people to experience it in all sorts of ways.
Mhm.
So the original concept was for it to be wall size, and then there would be two podiums, and there would be flowers in a transparent vase mixed with some sculpture pieces I have that I made from CDs that are
Mhm.
flowers, and they're like bringing in technology as well. And inside the water, it would be a tonic water. And tonic water, when it's absorbed by flowers, creates a bioluminescent effect.
Wow.
So they would glow.
Mhm.
So they would glow and they would be on both sides. And then as the exhibition goes, the flowers die and then they start to wilt. And then you see, more natural elements being brought into like the installation. So it's like you have the light from the lasers, you have the projection, maybe projection mapping, a couple of photographs, and flowers. So it's like a full on spatial intrusion. Like everywhere you go, you should be surrounded by
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah.
it's constantly engaging you. And you'd be able to consider and meditate about, your place in the universe. Like what impact are you having as an individual?
So I don't have any more specific questions, but is there anything else that you think is important for people to know going into viewing this work, or just anything else that you want to touch on that I haven't brought up in any of my questions?
Hmm. You're good. You've pretty much covered a lot of things here. Um, can't really think of anything actually. I think I've said all there is to say on this piece. It was lovely talking to
You
you.
too. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.